Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about a very disturbing case that took 57 years to bring justice. So let's jump right into it. The case of Irene Garza. Irene Garza was born in 1934. Irene graduated from McMillan High School and she was one of the first Latinas to be a twirler. And she was also homecoming queen at her university at Pan American College. At the time of Irene's disappearance, she was a 25-year-old woman who was a second grade teacher. She was described as a very shy but loving person. She loved her job. She loved everything that she did. And she also took her religion very seriously. She was a member of the Catholic Church and she would always go to the church every day for the communion as well as the mass. She really took her religion very seriously. And she said that during that time in her life, she was finding a lot of fulfillment within the church. On Saturday, April 16th, 1960, Irene had told her parents that she would be going to confession at Sacred Heart Church in McAllen. But when her parents did not hear back from her in the evening, they had assumed that Irene had went to the Easter Vigil Mass. But as the day went on, Irene did not return home, and by 3 a.m., her parents ended up getting in contact with the McAllen police and reporting their daughter missing. On April 18th, a passerby had found some belongings near a McAllen road that belonged to Irene. They had found a purse, her left shoe, and as well as a lace veil that she was wearing. After the discovery of these items, the authorities and volunteers had gathered a search party in search of Irene to hopefully bring her home and see where exactly she was. At this point in time, they had no idea what happened to Irene and they were hoping that they would be able to find her alive. During this time, many tips had came in. A woman had ended up calling the Garza household claiming that she was Irene and that she had been kidnapped and taken to a nearby hotel. Upon further investigation, this was a hoax call. Another tip came in from a waitress in Edinburgh claiming that she had dealt with a customer who said that he was the one that murdered Irene. Upon further investigation, this was apparently a joke and obviously was not true. The man was ruled out and he had nothing to do with Irene's disappearance. However, on April 21st, about several miles away where Irene's purse, left shoe, and veil were found, her body was unfortunately discovered in a river canal. And upon further investigation, they had noticed that she had been beaten with a hard object as well as assaulted, and her cause of death was suffocation. Any physical evidence that might have been left on Irene, such as blood or semen, would have been washed away since she had been in the river canal for so long. Irene was found fully dressed except for her shoes and underwear, and her lavender blouse had been unbuttoned. After the discovery of Irene's body, law enforcement had questioned over 500 people, including known sex offenders. They also carried out about 50 polygraph exams and even offered a $2,500 reward for any information on Irene's murder. Irene's death had caused such a stir in Texas that even a local businessman offered a $10,000 reward for any information on Irene's death. Authorities began to take interest in a local priest, and his name was John Bernard Fight. He was the person who heard Irene's last confession. Many churchgoers on the day of Irene's disappearance had reported that the confession line had seemed to be moving quite slow, and they had also noted that John had left about several times during the time of confession. What's even more alarming is that even fellow priests had came forward saying that on the night of the mass, they had noticed that John had scratch marks all along his arm. The priest also mentioned on the day of Irene's disappearance that John had taken Irene to the rectory to do the confession, which was very unusual to do a face-to-face confession. Initially, John had denied hearing Irene's confession in the rectory, and he stated that the reason why he kept leaving the church during the time of Irene's disappearance was because he had actually broken his glasses and he needed to go back to his home to get a replacement for his glasses. But when he got to his home, he realized that he did not have his keys, so he had to climb up to the second floor, and while he was climbing up, that's where he got all of the scratches on his arms, and therefore he didn't know what authorities were talking about. However, he recanted his statement saying that he did in fact hear Irene's confession in the rectory, but everything else was true. What's even more alarming about John is that 3 weeks prior to Irene's death, there was a woman whose name was Maria Guara. She was kneeling at a communion rail at another church, and she ended up being sexually assaulted while she was at that church. many people had suspected that it was John. However, the people who suspected this were a part of the church, and the priest had told them not to think this about a priest because priests are not supposed to be committing these violent crimes. However, when Maria had went to authorities, John was put up in a lineup, and she immediately picked John out of the lineup and said that he was the one that assaulted her. John at first denied these allegations and stated that he did in fact go to that church, but he never assaulted Maria. Initially, a case was brought against John, but the jury ended in a hung jury, so rather than go for a second trial, John had pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor charge of aggravated assault, and he had to pay a $500 fee. At the time, John claimed that he did not understand what pleading no contest meant, and that he didn't realize that this was initially a conviction. After legal proceedings in Maria's case, John was sent to a monastery in Missouri. A religious leader at the monastery had told one of the other monks that John had confessed to him to a murder in 1960. The monk's name was Dale Tacchini. The religious leader was hoping that Dale Tacchini would be able to counsel John and be able to see if he would be up for disposition to be able to become a monk. When asked why Dale never came forward during this investigation, Dale claimed that he thought that at the time it was not his right to judge John for anything that he had done in his past. So although John had confessed to the people at the monastery, this confession had went unreported to authorities for many more years. However, in 2002, McAllen Police Chief Victor Rodriguez decided to reopen the investigation. Chief Rodriguez had brought in a newly formed cold case unit composed of Texas Rangers, one who was named Ruby Jaramillo, and he was the one who was leading the investigation. Also in 2002, Dale Tacchini had decided to come forward with the confession that John had murdered a girl around Easter. At the same time, another assistant pastor had also came forward who worked at the church where Irene was. He also stated that John had confessed to him about the murder of Irene. Although there were new witnesses, the district attorney, Irene Garza, did not think that these were credible sources, so she did not want to pursue a case against John Fight. One of Irene's cousins stated that she remembers Irene Garza approaching her at the courtroom and stating that she would never get an indictment in this case. In 2014, Irene Garza had stepped down from her district attorney post, and Ricardo Rodriguez was the new district attorney. As the new district attorney sworn that he would bring justice to Irene's case no matter what the cost was. In 2016, John Fight was finally arrested for Irene Garza's murder. This had been 57 years after her initial murder, and he was finally going to be standing trial in 2017. John's defense attorney claimed that there was no evidence whatsoever linking John to the murder of Irene Garza. Many women also came forward during this trial saying that John had approached them. One witness, whose name was Beatrice Garcia and who was a great friend of Irene, stated that one day she was walking home from church. John approached her asking her if he would be able to take pictures of her in black in a cemetery. Another one of Irene's friends came forward, Anna Hollingworth. She said that Irene had confided in her a couple weeks before her murder that John had asked her to go to the rectory for a confession. As the trial began, more shocking details came out. A former reporter, Darnell Davis, came forward that there was an off-record meeting with the DA and reporter in 1962. And according to Davis, the DA knew exactly what John Fight had did. And they also knew that he would be sent to a monastery as well. An expert witness came forward as well, Father Thomas Doyle, testified about a letter between the clergy members and the DA that has to do with the conspiracy between the church and the DA to hide what John Fight did. During this time, Dale Tacchini, who was 88, also testified against John and what he heard when he was at the monastery. On December 7th, 2017, John is convicted and he is sentenced to life in prison for Irene's murder. 57 years later, Irene is finally able to rest in peace. Many of her family and friends believe that now she's finally at peace now that her killer is behind bars. Guys, this case was absolutely insane. I think that this case is just so much to really think about. I really genuinely don't believe that John should have been able to live his life for 57 years when it was clearly he had everything to do with this case. I feel like this case has to do with mishandled police work as well as cover-ups. I wish that this did not happen. Of course, you know, poor Irene, she suffered through so much and her family wasn't able to get closure for 57 years. I think that there has to be more justice to it. Not only should John be in trouble, but every single person who was involved, such as the priest, the people at the monastery, as well as the district attorney, should get in trouble as well, because this prevented Irene from getting justice as well as her family getting closure. But anyways, guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts below. Have you guys heard of this case? What do you guys think? It's a crazy case, guys, but let me know what you guys think, and please like and subscribe for more true crime cases. Please, guys, stay safe, and I hope you guys have a good one. Thank you so much.